Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll talk about the Steelers' loss to the Indianapolis Colts, dropping them to 3-1 on the season. Justin Fields, who I thought played very well in this game, the defense, the biggest things they have to face, and the offensive line, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you need to download today. Download Game Time, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans, it's not a victory Monday. For the first time this season, the Steelers lose 27-24 to the Indianapolis Colts in what could have been a very impressive comeback, but it fell just short, and we're going to talk about a lot of it here. Now, I'm going to get to Justin Fields in a bit here because I think that if there's a positive from this game, and I think there's more than one, but if there is one positive to hang on to this game, it is that Justin Fields, I think, played very well and showed the potential of what could be your quarterback for the future. But let's talk about what led to the loss of this game, because I think that is still the story and maybe the thing that Steelers need to be focusing on to not let bleed over. And I thought specifically, you look at this game, individual mistakes at several key points, especially when it came down to the turnover battle, led to this loss. The Steelers are supposed to be a team that has takeaways. They had none, and they had several opportunities to get them. Joey Porter Jr., first play of the game, missed times to jump on a pass on the first pass. If he just, I think, times that route a little bit better, jumps at the right time, it's an interception on the first play of the game goes a completely different direction. Later in the first half on a drive where the Steelers did get a stop the Colts and hold them to a field goal, he dropped an interception in the end zone. Very similar play where he was in the right position, played it perfectly, just didn't finish the job and make the catch. If he makes any one of those interceptions, the Steelers maybe are just going to overtime at the end of the game instead of needing to score to win the game. So you look at those mistakes. You look at George Pickett's fumble inside the 5, and that to me is the roughest one that you got to look at there, because if he doesn't fumble that was the first time the Steelers were starting to figure things out on offense. If they punch that in for a touchdown, again, completely different game. Maybe you win the game. Definitely costly. Even if he just gets a field goal, again, you're looking at a tie game at the end of the game there. A big mistake there. The two missed interceptions there. And then, of course, late in the game, you get an early snap from Zach Frazier in the silent count, just misread and when it was supposed to be. That continues to be a problem, and it seems like it's more of a Zach Frazier problem right now because Justin Fields was still calling adjustments, and you could even see other linemen looking around, making their check calls. I think Zach Frazier just got lost in the moment and made a big mistake there. I also think one of the touchdowns, Joey Porter Jr. ran with the wrong guy, because Patrick Queen was like, "Hey, we needed you here." Beanie Bishop was in the flat. We needed you on Josh Downs in this situation. So just mistakes all around, but you look at the opportunities also when they forced a fumble on Anthony Richardson, not picking up that fumble, I thought was a big mistake there. But you look at those plays, especially in the first half, they scored. The Colts scored on their first 3 possessions of the game. Each of those possessions, the 2 touchdowns and the field goal, the Steelers had a turnover opportunity right in their grasp, and they missed it. And those are the plays that can define a game. You make one of those turnovers, Steelers might win this game or at least go to overtime. And I think that shows like, hey, you need to end the Colts when they had those opportunities. They made them. George Pickens fumbled inside the 5. They recovered it. If that ball bounces out of bounds or the Steelers pick it up, maybe the Steelers win this game. Same thing for Justin Fields' fumble on his sack. They were all over that play. They made it happen. Granted, they didn't get any points off of it. But at the again, like the fact that they were able to capitalize on it, it goes to their credit. And I think that was the deciding point of this game was those things. Early on, I felt like the Colts had a good game plan, but then the Steelers figured it out. I mean, they had, I think at one point, the Steelers defense, after the first 3 drives, they forced a punt, a missed field goal, did give up a touchdown on some questionable calls in that drive. We'll talk about that. A field goal and a punt on -5 yards on the final drive the Colts had before the Steelers got the ball back for their last drive. I look at things, and we'll get to the defense specifically, but to me, I can't escape the mistakes I can't escape the key mistakes made by specific players is just the wrong times of the game. You need your playmakers to make plays. And what's crazy is George Pickens, I thought, outside of that fumble, had a really good game. He was getting open. He was making big plays. He was being the number one wide receiver, but you need him to not fumble. You need everyone to protect the football at that point down there. And if the Steelers defense just forces one turnover in this game with the multiple opportunities that were presented to them, they might win this game. That to me is the defining point of this. But I also don't think, and I think there's other points that we're going to get to later about, certain matchups that went against the Steelers, certain things in this game that they could have been also cleaner at. But to me, that is the deciding point of this game. Now, all that being said, Justin Fields played a part in that turnover problem because he did have a fumble. I think Justin Fields continues to show that he can be this team's future at quarterback if he keeps heading on this trajectory. And we've talked about it each week. He's gotten better and better and better. I thought his best game, the first 3 games was that Chargers game. I think this game was even better than that. Three touchdowns that he accounted for, all 3 in a row in the second half when you had to have them. And he might have had a fourth if Zach Frazier doesn't snap that ball early on that last drive and kind of spoil the pace that they were at there. But 22 of 34, 312 passing yards, a touchdown, a passer rating of 104.0, 10 rushes for 55 yards, 2 touchdown rushes, did have 1 turnover on the sack fumble. But again, I think this dude shows he has the headiness to be a good quarterback. He's making smart decisions with the football. He's making accurate throws down the field, reading things. I thought his he had a 38-yard pass down the sideline to George Pickens I thought was phenomenal. He threw some really good balls to Pat Freiermuth, who I also thought had a really good game. And I really think that if he continues to get in rhythm, you might be able to trust him to open up this offense a little bit sooner than the Steelers have. And that might bring the balance that you ultimately want with this team, because he's learning how to when to run at the right times, how to run at different spots. And the Steelers are getting more and more from him. I said this last week. I thought that after the win over the Chargers, Justin Fields at this point should be QB1 for the Steelers. Until we see like a really bad game and Russell Wilson's really healthy and you want to give him a shot at that point, that could very well be what happens at some point this year. But until that time, there was a point where when he fumbled that ball and the Steelers had only scored, I think 3 points at the point of that fumble. There was a question like, okay, well, let's see how he rebounds because this isn't good. But again, he responded to that fumble with 3 straight touchdown drives. Much like last week when he threw that interception against the Chargers, he then responded to that with a field goal drive and then a touchdown drive. So multiple scoring drives following turnovers in back-to-back weeks. I think that's a very good sign that Justin Fields is much more mature than I think a lot of people give him credit for, including myself. I thought that, one of his biggest problems in Chicago was he allowed mistakes to compound upon themselves in that environment. And with the Steelers, he's had back-to-back weeks where he's made mistakes that led to turnovers, things that he admits that he could correct. And then after that, followed it up with really good play and scoring drives that kept the Steelers in the game or won them the game. So, again, kudos to Justin Fields. I want to talk more about things that he did that I think are really solid, but we also got to talk about this defense because giving up 27 points to the Colts was ultimately the killer in this game. They didn't get nearly enough stops and again, didn't create turnovers. We'll talk more about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Game Time. It's fall, and that means there's plenty to do in Pittsburgh. There's no better place to find tickets for all those favorite live events of yours than Game Time. Game Time is the app that you can download right to your phone and has features like Game Time Picks, where it gets you tickets for your favorite live events and it makes that even easier to get them. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff that show you exactly what the best deals are to get great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, you can get tickets to artists like Wale, who's coming to the Roxy this Tuesday, tomorrow, or to the Steelers home game against the Cowboys next Sunday. All those things can be gotten with Game Time, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have super deals as well, where you can get your best combination of price with the best seat for the big game or the big concert or the big show. All those tickets can be gotten through the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Back here at the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue talking about the show here. I want to go over some more things with Justin Fields before I get to the defense. I also thought Justin Fields really did a good job with this game with managing pressure for the most part. There were times that he was under siege. I thought, the Colts were throwing some overload blitzes at him. And hey, this is a young offensive line. Mason McCormick made his first start of the season. That's a rookie guard next to a rookie center, 2 spots away from a rookie tackle. And you had second year guard Spencer Anderson at right guard when James Daniels went down. He was on a walking boot and crutches after the game. That's not a good sign. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I think managing it the way that he did was a really good positive for him. The Colts really were able to get after Justin Fields at times in this game. And they brought overload blitzes and they were able to get it done at times. But, still he didn't let that crush the Steelers outside of one play where he took a really bad sack and that he fumbled on. But 6 of 13 for third downs could be a little bit sharper there. But I really thought Justin Fields managing the situations, making the sharp throws. And again, I think what you've seen from Justin Fields is also a much more consistent throwing motion that's allowing him to be more precise with his passes down the field and in different parts of the field. He also looked like he attacked the middle of the field more in this game as well. Not as much as last game, but more than the first 2 games. And I think that's, again, showing growth in the right direction for a young quarterback at 25 years old, and you were looking to reform for the future of your offense. All good signs there. I know it's going to be the talk again throughout this week to see, Russell Wilson, he's fully healthy. Is he the guy? My opinion, they should keep riding with Justin Fields until I see some really bad signs, and keep Russell Wilson around, because you know what? I've seen plenty of teams handle these kind of situations in different ways. There's some teams that will stick with the young quarterback. They'll go to the old quarterback, or sometimes you just balance both. You go back, and I think back to the last time the Broncos won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. They did so in that year where they were putting Brock Osweiler in at times, and then Peyton Manning back in. It just depends on who's your hot hand. Right now, Justin Fields' hand is pretty hot. I wouldn't take the ball out of his hands until we see that it's not. And do so for a bit, not like, 2 drives and that's it, get him out of there. It'd be more so like a game and a half. Like if he has a Mitch Trubisky game against the Colts last year, that'd be a different type of story. But we've talked a lot about Justin Fields. Let's talk about this defense. This Steelers defense really didn't click on until late, not late, I'd say late first half. And really actually the second quarter, because you look at how they put the first quarter, they gave up 2 touchdown drives, just getting bullied at the line, allowing big plays in the passing game, rough spots there. But even in the second quarter, when the Steelers gave up the ball on offense on a turnover on downs and gave them a short field, the drive started at the Steelers 39-yard line. And so the Steelers had to defend that short field, and they did. They held them to a field goal there and then forced 2 straight punts after that. And I was impressed by how the Steelers made adjustments. Now, early on, you could definitely see, hey, the Colts had a plan of attack for how to go at the Steelers' zone defense with finding mismatches over the middle, finding in-breaking receivers. That certainly hurt the Steelers, and there were certainly miscommunications there. I think one of the big culprits, and I'm going to go over my all-22 film, but I think one of the biggest things to worry about from this game is, and biggest questions I have from this game is Joey Porter Jr. doing all right? Because again, the 2 dropped interceptions were rough, but he also there was the touchdown pass to Josh Downs. It really looked like Joey Porter misunderstood his assignment on that play just based off of the team's reactions. And again, I haven't gotten a chance to really look back over this game, but I just remember seeing one receiver Beanie Bishop run with his receiver to the flat. Joey Porter stayed in the flat as well, double covering that receiver, but leaving Josh Downs wide open, and seeing Patrick Queen looking like, Joey, that's not what you were supposed to do. I think that's a rough spot there. Joey Porter also got tagged for a flag that I thought was a bit ticky-tack, especially considering some of the other calls that were really rough in this game. I look at that, and I think that could be a big question. Can Joey Porter rebound? Can he make big plays? Because again, if he catches one of those interceptions we're talking about, Steelers probably win this game. If he doesn't get beat for that touchdown, they hold him to a field goal. Do they win the game? A lot of different points there, and I think that's a concern. That's a concern there. The run defense, I thought early on looked rough. Jonathan Taylor was getting going, but this is a Colts offense that we said, hey, they got an offensive line. They're going to try to run the ball on you. And early on they did. I think they figured out some mismatches where they were able to get guys to the second level and kind of slow up the Steelers linebackers. But once the Steelers figured that out, the run game wasn't all that effective late. I think that Jonathan Taylor was averaging like 8 yards per carry or something like that early on, and then through I think the second half, he might have had like one rush for more than like 4 yards, and most of the rushes were 3 yards or less after that point. And so, I think adjustments came there, maybe could have come a little bit sooner. But to me, the biggest questions I have on defense are like, hey, okay, this secondary is supposed to be a really good group at shutting people down. They didn't do it this week. They've done it pretty much every other week so far. And again, I don't think that Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson did anything special when they were in the game. They took what was right there in front of them. Maybe it just requires like, hey, let's be a little bit quick on it there. I thought there were a couple times where Peyton Wilson was out of position with where he was supposed to be in the Steelers zone. And that's part of part of why you put him out there was to help him be better at coverage, or hope that he's better at coverage than like a Landon Roberts or things and guys like that. But he's also a rookie, and it takes time to learn that. And I think that's the big thing. The Steelers have to look at this and they say, hey, all right, defense, you can still be you could still be an elite unit, but you have to be able to put clamps on situations like that, and you can't let this bleed over. Because to me, if I'm opposing offenses and I'm circling this game, this is the only game I can circle if I'm like an offensive coordinator and I say, how do we want to beat the Steelers defense? Well, we don't want to watch the Falcons tape. We don't want to watch the Broncos tape. We don't want to watch the Chargers tape because none of them did. Let's look at the Colts. And I would look at this game and I'd say like, hey, Shane Steichen drew up some really good concepts early on that got guys breaking to the middle part of the field behind the zone defense, hitting the right spots, and it allowed for in rhythm passing. I also thought they did a good job calling the protections because they always had an extra guy on the field helping against TJ Watt, whether it was chipping or adding or making sure that he had the longest path to get to the quarterback. I thought those were some really good really good schemes there by the Colts. But again, I thought the defense adjusted. If the Steelers defense makes the turnovers in this game, they win this game. And they again, it wasn't like, they're not asking for miracles there. You're asking for an interception not to be dropped, an interception and jumping a pass to be properly timed, and simply to recover a fumble that's right in front of you. Any one of those plays happen, this game goes differently here. But I think the biggest things for the Steelers defense, you got to make sure that, hey, the run concepts that you gave up early on, and again, I can't tell you exactly what they were because I'm just going off of raw reaction. I watched the game, same as you guys. I was here in Pittsburgh, didn't go to Indianapolis for this one. And I got the feel of like, hey, like there's probably just like looking at these plays live, it looks like they're getting a guard to the second level, a tackle to the second level, the center to the second level, and they need to find a way to clamp that down. And I feel like once they did, the run game wasn't nearly as big of a factor. But certainly the pass rush not being as active as you wanted it to be, the lack of turnovers. I think that those are questions you have moving forward, and if you can adjust those, I think you'll be fine. But I don't think it's a cause for alarm on the Steelers defense. It's more like a, hey, all right, you've learned this. Let's go back out next week and see what you can do against the Cowboys team that's also going to be bringing some big playmaking ability. Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb, probably the best receiver you'll have faced all season. Granted, I think the Steelers. They've shown their ability to take away a number one wide receiver this season. They just need to do it consistently. They didn't do it in this game. Michael Pittman, 6 catches, 113 yards, no touchdowns, but all that on 9 targets. Not a good showing there. Josh Downs also 8 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Other than that, really wasn't that much production out of the Colts receivers there, but still, that's 195 yards through two guys. That's what you need to improve upon. And so again, I look back to Joey Porter Jr. I'm not going to give my stars and skulls grades yet. We got to go through the tape and see what it is. But if I'm pointing to anything, I'm pointing at that right now. I think that's the biggest obstacle that the Steelers face moving forward with this defense is shoring up the coverage, being in the right spots, understanding those assignments, and taking advantage of the turnover opportunities when they're right there in front of you. Because if they're able to do that early on, and this is a 3-0 game in the first half, because again, they had 3 turnover plays there, then this game goes in a completely different direction. The Steelers probably win this game. But again, I look at different parts, and I know there's some people out there saying, Chris, talk about the penalties. I did think that the penalties favored the Colts slightly in this game. I thought that the Minkah Fitzpatrick, an unnecessary roughness, was a completely joke. He hit shoulder to shoulder right after the ball went by. You got to close on a guy like Adonai Mitchell. He's a fast dude. I talked about him in the draft. You let him slip by you, he gets a touchdown. That was egregiously bad. I thought that I know that the announcers thought that the roughing the passer penalty on Justin Fields was was a bad call, but that's literally the spirit of the rule. Tom Brady got several plays off of that rule, and if you want to just change it because it's not him anymore, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't fall straight down on the quarterback. That's literally what the rule was written for, and they did the textbook version of that penalty. So I didn't think that was a bad call. I did think George Pickens got held on the second down pass after the Zach Frazier mishap on the snap in the final drive of the game. I thought that was pretty bad. I also thought Joe Flacco got away with one intentional grounding. There was one play he didn't, but I think it was the play where Cam Hayward had him in his grasp and he just threw it out of bounds. I didn't see one receiver by where he threw it. I thought that should have been a penalty, and I didn't think that he broke the tackle box. And though that play came right before the Minkah Fitzpatrick unnecessary roughness call, and if you look at the second half, that is the only drive that the Colts got a touchdown in the second half. Without those two calls, if they make the correct call on Flacco and don't make the incorrect call on Minkah Fitzpatrick, maybe this game goes a different way. But ultimately, again, like, we can point to those things, but if you're the Steelers, you're looking at the things that you had in your control, and that's dropping interceptions, missing opportunities at turnovers, letting up too many in-breaking routes. Things like that need to be fixed, and definitely I think will be a point of focus going into next week when you're facing a Cowboys offense that's probably going to try to emulate a similar approach against your team. But we got to talk more about this offense too, because this was a game that the Steelers were supposed to be bullies. They were supposed to push around a beat-up Colts offensive line. It really didn't happen, and I want to talk about what I saw that led to that not happening. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you also by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, all year long. There's plenty of deals to be had right now. Before we get to those deals, let's get to some odds and ends going on right now. Monday Night Football, two contests that you could put money down on. The Dolphins are 2.5-point home favorites over the Titans, with the over-under set at 37.5 points. The Dolphins are money line minus 144, Titans plus 122. The Lions are 4.5-point favorites at home over the Seahawks. The Lions minus 210 on the money line, Seahawks plus 176, and the over-under there set at 46.5 points. All those odds, ends, and lines and more can be found on FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. And right now, if you're new to FanDuel, get started. Go on FanDuel. Make a $5 bet today, and when you do so, if you're new to FanDuel, you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your order. When you make your first bet of $5 or more today. That's $200 of free bets to new customers when you bet just $5 only on FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's number one sportsbook today. That's FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue this show. I want to talk about the offensive line in this game because there are some serious concerns about this offensive line, and I think it is starting to stack up serious injury questions here. You're already missing three starters in Troy Fautanu and Isaac Seumalo, but now James Daniels in a walking boot and in crutches after the game. That's a really bad sign. That's three starters you could be down there, and three guys that arguably might have been your best offensive lineman. Isaac Seumalo is like really the leader of this group, and he's been missing since training camp when he had an injury. And then you had Troy Fautanu, who a lot of the team basically said that, hey, we feel like he's our second best offensive lineman. He's on injury reserve, not likely to return until maybe the playoffs. If that happens, he's also a rookie, so it would take time for him to probably adjust. And then now in this game, you have James Daniels go down. In my book, James Daniels was maybe your best offensive lineman, at least pushing with Zach Frazier for that. And now you have both of the two offensive linemen that you paid to start and be the leaders of this group, the elder statesmen, the vets of this group, they're out of the picture. And now you got young guys stepping in. Now, early on, just looking at what happened in this game, I thought that Mason McCormick, when it came to running the ball, I thought that he started to get later in the game, because I think there were some things that he missed. But in the pass protection, I think that's where we saw, okay, this was why the Steelers have been patient, because there were times I think he could have been stronger in pass protection than he was. This is also, again, just my naturally just post-game look without really getting to review the tape and look over things. I'm going to do the tape looking at and get you guys more reviews on that with my stars and skull grades after the fact. But yeah, when I look at this game, I have questions about this offensive line down the board. I thought Broderick Jones I think for the most part had a decent game. I think he gave up one sack in this game or in a couple pressures that were bad, but I thought there were also times that he was a key point in the game. One of Justin Fields' rushing touchdowns, he took on the pass rusher, just rode him completely out of the play, and that allowed Justin Fields to be able to run into the end zone on one of the plays. But I think that he's getting better, and I think that one thing we're seeing is he is more willing to use those hands, which to me tells me that Broderick Jones is getting he's getting healthier, and that maybe the big problem that he was facing was just that his elbow was hurt and he couldn't get full force in his punches, which is something we said for weeks, and now doesn't appear to be his issue right now. Still has things to clean up. Again, young, raw player. That's why he fell to the Steelers the way he did. But I still think that he is moving in the right direction there. Zach Frazier, it was tough for me to really grade Zach Frazier based on things. I really thought that the Colts were selling out to stuff the run whenever Najee Harris was on the field. And it's something that I've said for years because people said, oh, Jaylen Warren's the guy. It's like, no, I think that Jaylen Warren's getting a lot of these runs, and it's not to minimize what he's doing, but the space that's there for him and not for Najee is because teams are selling out to stuff the number one running back of the team that says we want to run the football more than anything else. But when the backups are in, they're not doing that as much. They're looking for other things. And you look at Cordero Patterson coming in this game, Najee Harris, 13 carries, 19 yards, terrible average there. But again, it's not like he can't get those yards if they're there. They're just not there. And I'm looking at all these plays, and I'm seeing just linebackers just flying to the holes, safeties flying to the holes. Everyone's selling out to stop that run from happening. And then on the plays where Cordero Patterson's breaking loose, they're not overloading. And I think the Steelers were catching them off guard. It's unfortunate that he went out with an injury. I think they said it was an ankle injury, but 6 carries, 43 yards. Really good pace for Cordero Patterson, something the Steelers maybe should take note of moving forward with how they're running the football. But again, Najee Harris, when you got it to him in space, he was fine. 3 catches for 54 yards in space, had a 32-yarder where he was running over guys. I think it's that's encouraging. That again, just find ways to get him the ball where he's not having to dodge 2 defenders in the backfield. That'd be good. But I think the Steelers, they're going to have to develop more game plans with Arthur Smith with how to balance things for this young offensive line. We talked about them needing to do that against the Falcons in week 1. Didn't lead to any touchdowns or anything, but I think that there were we saw some things there like, okay, now maybe get back to that, but in different ways, because Justin Fields, I think, is showing you that you can throw the football with him and trust him to make smart decisions with the football throughout a game. And if you trust him to do that and he's able to hurt defenses early, maybe that backs them off the run game. Maybe that says, hey, okay, when Najee Harris is in the game, we can't afford to flood the line of scrimmage. Why? Because Justin Fields might actually hurt us, and he's shown the ability to throw the deep ball, hit different parts of the field, and also use his legs to run. So there is a balance that can be made here that can work around the Steelers' offensive line. But again, they're still going to need to make sure that these guys are healthy. They're still going to need to make sure that the Steelers they're still going to be better in the run game. When in the trenches there, they're still going to be better in pass protection. They do those things. I think this offensive line can get there. But again, this is what comes with a young offensive line. You go back to the early days of like Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro. They weren't all that right away. It took them time to learn things. Marquise Pouncey, burst onto the scene. But as far as kind of getting that, cohesion, for lack of a better term, of the offensive line, getting that cohesion, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It took time for them to form that 2000 to the 2010s offensive line, just like it took time to form that 2000s offensive line. With Jeff Hardings and like Alan Faneca and Marvell Smith and those guys. So I think that's coming. I don't think that there's anything to look at there, but I think the biggest concerns are injuries. Is Spencer Anderson going to have to start at right guard for a while? If that's the case, need to see what's going on there. But maybe Isaac Seumalo comes back soon, and then you can move Mason McCormick over to right guard and see how he plays there. But again, just going to see how that plays out. I think the Steelers' offensive line still has upward trajectory to it. Again, different points of this game, you saw them moving people, getting off the ball. If they can do that more consistently moving forward, that'll be good. But this was a team that was ranked dead last in run defense, and they did not really get the run game going when they really needed to in this game. That's certainly a problem. That the Steelers still win the time of possession game, but only minimally in 31 minutes and 7 seconds to 28 minutes and 53 seconds. You'd want a little bit more there. And again, maybe that's a result of them not running the ball enough. Maybe that's a result of the early downs, the early part of the game where they weren't moving the football enough. I think those are things that you have to look at here, the timing of those things. But all in all, if you're going back to this loss and you're saying, hey, this is disappointing, it is. You had Joe Flacco come on the field. You were hoping to get after him. But I think it would make a lot of sense for the Steelers to look at this game and say, hey, let's note up the weaknesses here, because definitely the Cowboys are going to be looking at that, and they're going to be trying to do the same thing to you next week. If you're the Steelers, shore those things up and you can get back to your winning ways. But again, looking at what the Steelers are, it's tough to be mad at them right now overall. Disappointing loss, but you're still 3-1. You're still first place in the division. The Bengals did win the game, so they picked up a game, but that's still 3-1 to 1-3. Right now, as I'm recording this like a late afternoon here, after the Steelers game, the Browns are down 13-10 to the Raiders right now. So I don't know if that's if that'll hold, but if the Browns fall to 1-3, then you're 2 games up on 2 division rivals, and we'll see what goes on tonight between the Bills and the Ravens, which may put you 2 games up on the whole division. So again, lots to be said there. But again, 3-1 through 4 games. If you would ask most Steelers fans that at the start of the season, would you take a 3-1 start? You'd say yes. Would you love 4-0? Absolutely. And there's things to learn about this. But right now, I still feel like the Steelers are in the driver's seat. They're still doing what they need to do. They need to shore up the offensive line, get those, I think get Justin Fields maybe involved with a few different things early on in games to let this offense get going maybe a little bit faster. But also on defense, clearing up the miscommunications that led to some in-breaking routes and guys that got open, figure out whatever it was the Colts got going in the run game, making sure the Cowboys can't replicate that. You do those 3 things, I think the Steelers are in a really good spot to play well throughout the rest of the season and keep this 3-1 pace. Because again, they keep this pace up for the next season. Through 4 games, win 3 games, through 4 games, get 3 wins. You hold that until game 17. That you're 12-4 going into the last game of the season, which is easily getting you into the playoffs, might win you the division if you win that last one. So all that to be said, we have a lot more to break down. I haven't had a chance to watch all 22. We'll be doing that tomorrow. Tune in for the Locked On Steelers podcast. Then we'll be hopefully doing Stars and Skulls with Alan Saunders as usual. We'll break that down and get all our thoughts here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, by the way, to the live post-game show I did with Adam Bittner for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. That was a lot of fun. And also all the people that were in the live chat that I did for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette during the game. That was also a lot of fun. Had a few people dropping some show references in there. That was pretty cool. So appreciate all the fans out there and everyone who supports me in all my different platforms. Again, at Carter Critiques for Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the different places there. I'm back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers as we give Stars and Skulls grades for the first loss of the season. It's Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.